Welcome to the second episode of James's Coaching Learning podcast. In today's episode, we are going to look at a player's perspective of coaching. So today we're very lucky to be joined by David Williams, and we're going to discuss his journey through rugby, his experience, as I said, with different clubs and different environments. Before I introduce my co-host, if you didn't manage to see our first episode, the who, what, why, where we really explain what this podcast is about and a little bit about myself and James's backgrounds, please check it on our YouTube video. But before further ado, let's move forward for this second episode. So James, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, hi guys. So today we're really lucky. We've got a player perspective episode. Really lucky to be joined by, as James mentioned, Dave Williams, who's currently over with the Leicester Tigers. Dave, I'll let you introduce yourself, but obviously I think a few people will be aware of you were at NTU Uni and played for Nottingham for 4 seasons, I've got it as, and obviously went on loan with the Tigers since lockdown. Do you want to just introduce yourself a bit, mate?
Yeah, pleasure to be on the podcast. I guess as they both said, I came through Trent University with James. Was in the meantime, during my 4 years there, I was playing with Nottingham Rugby in the Championship, and then was lucky enough to get an invitation to go on loan with Leicester over the lockdown period. So I've made my first Premiership starts, which is great. And again, we started up today again for the 2021 season.
How was that, mate? Aching, or how was today?
Not as daunting as I anticipated, or the boys anticipated, but that kind of only increases the nerves the rest of the week. We're in every day, including Saturday this week. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think they needed us to blow our load too early on.
No.
Those Broncos are coming your way soon.
They're on the horizon, mate, on the horizon. So how did you get into rugby then, Dave? Going right back to start, what was it that brought you into rugby?
Well, I guess being from Leicester, it's back in when I was growing up, it was more of a rugby town, city than a football one.
Yeah.
But all my friends in primary school all played football, really. A couple played rugby, but most of them played football. But my dad being Welsh, he grew up in the valleys. It was in his blood. So when I was 7 or 8 years old, I can't remember exactly, but he took me down to the local team, Leicester Vipers, in Whetstone. I was there for a few years playing, and then a couple of my mates moved to Lutterworth, and I followed with them to keep in contact with them. And I was at Lutterworth until I was 16 before getting picked up by the Tigers Academy.
What does your dad think of how the weekend went with Wales France? Sorry, I have to mention it.
Oddly enough, he hasn't actually got round to watching it, so he doesn't know. It's a weird one in this house. He has fingers in so many sporting pies. He watches the cycling, the darts, the rugby, the football on constantly, and he has to catch up almost. And he tells me, he texts me pretty much every day, just saying, "Don't tell me the score of this game. Don't tell me the."
Keep him off this podcast then.
I actually believe he will come back from work and then probably the next 10-15 minutes and switch it on. So I'll go back down. I'll probably watch it with him.
Fair enough.
So just looking at, I was like any host, Dave, done a little bit of reading and research. And we saw obviously when you were back at that beginning of your journey, and after you'd picked up with the Tigers Academy, and you spent kind of a season or half season with the Leicester Lions, was it, on loan?
Yeah.
So obviously you must have been, I'm guessing, 15, 16 years old?
17, I think.
17. Yeah, played 10 games. So obviously we think from my point of view, that's kind of thrown in at the deep end, kind of 10 games at 17 in that environment. What was how were you kind of treated and stuff at that stage of your journey, kind of beginning to play those senior games?
I've just done it in my head. I think I was 18 actually, but
okay.
Nonetheless, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, so a few of us that were too old to play in I can't remember what it's called, the Academy League, so to speak. We were too old by maybe months or weeks. So there were 4 of us that were initially sent off to play for Leicester Lions, and yes, we I don't know, maybe like snotty little 18-year-olds that are at Tigers think, oh, I don't want to go to Leicester Lions and train on a Tuesday and Thursday in the dark with builders and plumbers. And to be fair, we arrived there and we were welcomed with open arms. Like, I've only got good memories from there. It was a great experience. It was a decent level for especially the age and the physicality that I was at the time. It helped develop me definitely across in a rugby perspective. Like, I was used to playing expansive, like hands-on rugby, like being a back three myself, and then it's very attritional in the national leagues, as I'm sure you're aware. So it was different from going and playing maybe Allianz Park as a 17-year-old kid to going and playing Preston Grasshoppers away or Huddersfield on a January Sunday night. It's but yeah, as I said, they're a really good club, well ran, bleed purple, like big up Leicester Lions.
That's great. And so obviously something that struck out to me is obviously you kind of had the loan at Tigers recently, obviously the loan at Lions back when you were 18. What was you're interested, if you're coming in on loan, how much did it feel like and obviously there was kind of 6-7 years difference, and coaching's moved on and changed and stuff. What was the emphasis on kind of your development when you were on loan? Because I'd imagine you were sent on loan to get those experiences, but what was it kind of like? Were the coaches viewing you as this is a short term to help us win, or how much time and emphasis might have been put on your own personal development?
I've never really thought of it in that way. I guess obviously naturally we were sent over to get some game time to develop our game, and as I said, I echo that, and we did that. Whether when we arrived at Leicester Lions, we weren't necessarily sat down and thought this is where we're going to go with you. Mm-hmm. We were 4 Leicester Tigers young backs who they thought, like, we'll play 3 of you and sit one of you on the bench a week to keep the rest of the backs happy, but we'll flood you in to try and get some wins under their belt, because I believe at the time they were sitting fairly low down in the table. But like, I don't really know if there was a plan. The coaches did ask for our perspective. The coaches did ask for our perspective. I do remember at Leicester, just out of Leicester Lions, that is, just to gauge like what we thought their shape was and how it related to ours that we were playing at Leicester. And I guess it was fairly similar at the time, to the point where, with a few injuries, I slotted in for my first ever game at fly half. We lost, but I thought I played all right. But
Good lad. I don't doubt that, mate.
Yeah. Very much a ball at the line, dummy and go.
Yeah.
That's off my left hand at the time, so.
No, that's cool. I was just wondering, because obviously, thinking from a coach's point of view, and like you say, you never really thought of it like that. It's quite often we think of sending players out on loan and it's go and get experience, but actually,
yeah,
how's the player then perceived in the new place? What's it like for them, rather than because go and get some game time when that's 80 minutes of the week that you've sent them out to that place on loan, kind of thing.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I imagine my experience with that is probably similar to most, whether it's at the top level or it's a young lad coming through. You're sent off to get game time, but I guess there's not masses of clarity normally as to what you're going to gain out of that. Yeah. I guess maybe physicality is obvious because you're a young lad playing in a grown men's environment and you've never done that before. But I don't know. I'd be very surprised across the board if there's many targets or emphases on particular aspects of a player's style of play or something that a coach aims to see from them going out of loan. I'm not really sure.
I mean,
that's interesting.
What I find really interesting is, you mentioned back then that at Leicester Lions, the coaches asked for your perspective. And I find that really, really interesting. Obviously, with COVID at the moment, there's a lot of coaching conversations going on, coach to coach. But I just wonder how many coaches are actually reaching out to players, COVID or not. So I find that really interesting about how the coaches were actively coming to you, younger players that were out on loan, looking for your perspective. I guess what I need to ask you, Dave, is what do you look for in a coach? And obviously you've had a vast amount of experience over the years, it sounds like. What are the key things you look for in a coach?
I get As you said, I've played with X amount of head coaches and different backs coaches, etc. And I've played under like very laissez-faire, kind of almost French. You do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Kind of here's the system. But if you play out of that, don't worry about it. To the point where, on the flip side, I've played under a coach that will create a set piece where there'll be 7 specific phases, and we'll target the 7th phase as the one we're going to score on. And if you don't, we're almost like little chess pieces or robots.
Right.
That is obviously less fun. Might be a little bit successful at times, but it's not particularly enjoyable. As a coach, I like a coach to, in a sense, be fairly autocratic, in a sense that all the players buy into what he does. Maybe not autocratic, but kind of a great man, like a leader that knows exactly how he wants his teams to play.
Right.
But once we're in a specific structure, say as a 1-3-3-1, as a classic, I guess, rugby.
The go-to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there are different ways that I've played the 1-3-3-1, be it at Nottingham, be it at Trent, be it at Tigers, and at my stint in Wales. But the ability that once you're in the structure, that the coach has trust in you as players to then play around with it almost. It doesn't need to be, you have to do this move in here. Give us the playbook, or give us, like, as I guess Leicester Lions did, ask the players what they've liked and what's worked previously. Because, especially, I guess, the level that I'm at now, there's internationals, there's players that have played for clubs from all across the world, and so many different lifestyles and ways that people play and coach, etc. That a buy-in and a collective understanding from so many different perspectives, and 9 times out of 10 arguably be better than the one specific coach's way that he wants a team to play.
Yeah, and as you said there, you mentioned not necessarily autocratic, but we'll use that. Do you think that's very much the level that you are at? You're in very much professional environment, i.e. the playing ability is higher, whereas obviously if you were to go to, I don't know, an under-18s Nat 5 team, maybe they're not quite able to construct their own version of the 1-3-3-1.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, has that really have you evolved with the amount of years that you've played? So obviously at the start, obviously you wouldn't have had that knowledge, but as you've evolved, you've maybe had that more of a buy into the autocratic view because you're able to understand it more?
Yeah, I can definitely see that perspective. I guess when I arrived at Nottingham and I guess at Trent at the same time, as I said, like, I played a little bit of it in Wales, but I wasn't massively, like, I didn't completely comprehend the idea of a specific structure. Maybe that was because I was 19, 20 years old, and I hadn't got massive of experience at a professional or near professional level. So I think definitely as the understanding gets better, and I feel that James will probably agree with that. That especially with Trent, you get boys that come in at 18 and have played schoolboy rugby, which is very much jouet, do what you want.
Yeah.
Boys that, maybe in my case, there's Jake Farmworth, who arrived, I think he was 22 and had already played a Premiership game when he when he arrived at uni. There's boys on massive differing levels, and you can you see visually the understanding that takes place over the space of maybe a month or two's pre-season.
Yeah. So
as you get older and wiser and more experienced, yes, you do kind of buy into the coach's, I can't think of the word, vibe, so to speak.
Vibe, yeah, that's a good word.
So just on that, and thinking slightly about, I heard you mention the word fun a couple of minutes ago, mate. You were talking about the coach who you've had, the 7, you're going to score on the 7th phase, and this is how and why. And that was less fun, but you could see the success in it. Why do you think, and this is quite an open question, why do you think there are so many different ways of coaching at the moment?
Oh God.
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's quite obvious, I'd imagine, that lots of people would agree, well, everyone would agree, that playing where you've maybe got a bit of a framework, like, and I've seen it at some of the stuff that Trent do with you guys, where there's a bit of a framework, but there's lots of decision making and playing for the players to take ownership of, that is viewed as a more fun way of playing rather than, like you say, robotic and here's what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. Now, over the last few years, I think more and more has started to lend itself towards the former and the more player ownership. I was just wondering, from a player's point of view, maybe why do we still encounter coaches who believe in that more robotic style? Do you think it's because of how they just view the success and the outcome of the game, the importance of that?
Potentially. My age might be some of it. So I guess if you grew up and you're a bit of an older coach and your coaches were autocratic, or back when the Premiership originally began in the late 90s. I can't speak on behalf of them, so I don't know. But it tends to be the older coaches that are more autocratic. And on the flip side of that, some of the coaches that have been more successful, from what I've gathered, also are fairly autocratic. So I know Pat Lam is, as I guess you're aware, Bristol play very jouet and very open style of play. But from conversations I've had, he's autocratic in saying that. There is no on the flip side, you're a robot, you do this, you do that. I guess you can be an autocrat and just play and demand the jouet. I don't. To answer your question on completely, I'm not really sure. Might be age, might be
That's
fair. Under, but I don't know. It could be, I don't know, a menagerie of reasons.
On you
go
go,
on,
James.
go on.
All right,
okay, I was going to say. I'll go.
You go, mate. You go.
We're just following with that. I don't know if have you ever played under the same coach in two different environments?
I don't believe so. I guess the closest I've got to that is Neil Fowkes at Trent and then Neil Fowkes at Nottingham, and that they are slightly different. Because obviously, University Rugby's got very much a bit more jouet style, and then he moved to head coach at Nottingham, which was a lot more structured.
And that's cool. We'll use Fowkesy as the example. Then is there a lot of talk about how the environment affects how you act and how you behave as a coach, as I'm sure you're probably aware of. Did you notice real changes in how Neil, for example, might have gone about his work? Obviously, I'd imagine with Nottingham, he gets a lot more contact time with the players, perhaps, than when he was at the uni. I was just wondering if there was any noticeable differences where you and other of the boys would have been coached by him in both the Trent and the Nottingham environment?
Slightly. So I guess it's player management's a big one. So he would have been aware, and because he worked with Trent for I don't know how many years, but he has had so much contact on with different players that he's well aware that players are going to go out on a Tuesday sometimes before a Wednesday game. Obviously, it's not ideal, and especially maybe before the Bucks Super Rugby League existed. But it happened, and he was aware, and he managed the players almost to get on their side, whereas they would have gone out on a Monday and a Tuesday in, say, September. But by the time it got to December, January time, he got the players onto his side rather.
Yeah.
And was fun with it though. Like, he wasn't like laying down the law, but he set standards, and the boys, especially when I was in, like, say, my freshman year, the older boys at university definitely adhered to it. And then I guess you get the senior boys on your side, and the boys that, I guess, the freshers like me buy into it. He didn't need to do that with Nottingham. So being a professional environment, it's the standard, it's expected. You might go out on a Friday night after a big win at Lady Bay, but
of course. Oh, hello. Cool. We can edit that part.
We can edit. That's fine.
Okay. Stop
I'll
recording.
Stop and download this. Welcome back to James's Coaching Learning Podcast. Sorry there, we had a little technical difficulty. We are coaches after all, not technical geniuses. James, where were we up to?
David was just finishing off talking about Fowkesy, Neil Fowkes over at Nottingham. Should we move on slightly?
Yeah.
On to a slightly different topic. So Dave, and also you've alluded to it a few times so far, and I was going to bring it up, is obviously after that time with Leicester Lions, you went and spent a year in Wales.
Yep.
We're just wondering, so now you've corrected me on the age once. I'm going to guess you were 19.
I was 9.
There
yes.
we go. There we go. Well, a 19-year-old going to Wales for a year isn't the most normal of decisions. Do you want to talk a bit about why you went, what you learned, how it was, I guess?
So I got released by Tigers after 3 years there in maybe March, April time or so. And at the time, I was a bit naive, just kind of thought I put all my eggs into the Tigers basket. And in the back of my head, I did think I was going to be let go. Okay. And then obviously I was. And I thought, panic, like, what do I want to do? It's too late to apply for university. Can I go elsewhere? I had a trial day at Gloucester, but I don't know how much you can show in a 1.5 hour session. But I picked up an agent fairly quickly. I spoke to a couple and picked who I thought was the best one. I won't name him just for. I guess there's no need. But
That's cool.
He then spoke to a couple or a few clubs around the UK, and came back with a team called Ebervale, who are in the Welsh Premiership and are in the middle of nowhere.
Didn't get big Cardiff nights out then.
No, not quite. Essentially, my agent sold me the dream. Like, he was like, you'll get some time with the Dragons, and I get eventually, hopefully by January, Christmas time, the Dragons will have snapped you up. You'll have a great time in Wales. I've got a bloke that's been to Wales before from South Africa, and now he's doing X, Y, and Z. And I lapped it up as a young 19-year-old lad that had got nothing on his plate, and bit the bullet and headed down to Wales. As I said, middle of nowhere. It was part time, so they were Welsh Prem. It was train Tuesday, Thursday, play weekend. So I was working as a recruitment consultant in Newport at the time, which was a 50-mile commute.
Nice.
Day as a 19-year-old. Yeah, again, just very. I've got mates that are out doing Freshers Week, and I'm doing cold calls to local lorry drivers. It was a bit of a bizarre year. Grew a lot as a bloke, as a boy, I guess, back then, actually. Learned a lot about myself, learned how to cook, clean, do the washing. But I guess in a rugby sense, developed a fair bit as a rugby player. So they brought in a coach called Nigel Davis, who had been involved with Wales and was head coach of the Scarlets. And he, I think, had a couple of years sabbatical from rugby and wanted a project to get him back in love with the game. And he chose a town in rural Wales called Ebervale, who had recently gone through who had gone from like the Welsh Nat 1, won that, had gone into the Championship and had broken into the Prem, and we were lower half of the table. And that year we won the Welsh Prem. He was a very good coach, very nurtured me a little bit. Knew that I'd come from a bit of a mollycoddle background. I guess I was nurtured a bit at Leicester, and he thought best way to do that is nurture me here, because I look around and then there's university students who are all good lads that went to Cardiff for Cardiff Met, but they lived an hour away from me. And then the rest of the blokes there, the players, were all, I don't know, plumbers, electricians, teachers. And then there was me, that was just a 19-year-old lad that had gone down there to play rugby, and a bit alien. Like, it was the hardest year of my life. Like, I was lonely. Like, it was tough, especially with my girlfriend. She was in her first year at Leeds University, so we were a good 5-6 hours away from each other. So that was tough. But I learned a lot about myself. The coaching was more akin to Leicester Lions than anything professional that I've done. that's more due down to, I guess, the hands-on time that the coaches were able to have with us. But I'm glad I did it. I now know I never want to move back to the Welsh Prem.
So I guess coming back from Wales now, in hindsight, you said obviously the hardest year of your life. You know, you learned a lot of things sort of outside of rugby. Looking back now, what do you think you've taken from that Wales experience, apart from never wanting to go back to the Welsh Prem?
If I'm honest, not masses.
Oh, that's
really, not massive. Like, it was one of the most physical leagues and one of the most achievable leagues. Partly due to the weather, partly due to the facilities, partly due to the culture. I imagine you're aware, similar to South Africa, South Wales as a region is riddled with steroids and that kind of thing. And you can tell looking at some players that, well, you know who has and who hasn't done it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's part of the physicality. And at the time, I thought, well, I'm massively developing here. And then, I don't know, maybe on reflection, maybe I didn't develop as much as I did. I got the opportunity at Nottingham following that by, I guess, pure luck, actually, more than anything else. Right place, right time. But yeah, it was kind of a nothing year for me almost.
Right. No, I mean that's on you,
James. Doing this again. Okay, I was going to ask how that might have led to Nottingham, but also just reflecting on that. And again, no need to name and stuff, but from a coaching point of view, if you were to put yourself in your coach's shoes in Wales, do you think they could have done stuff differently to support you? And I mean, this is as much as on-field development as off-field, because 19-year-old players, any 19-year-old player, but especially one who's gone to Wales, is going to need off-field support as well as on-field. Yeah, and this isn't to say at all that bad jobs were done or anything. It's more just wondering, on reflection and maybe learnings and experiences you've had since. If you were coaching your 19-year-old self, what would you have been doing and saying, both on and off-field kind of stuff?
Start with off-field. Like, there's one thing that I'll clarify, and that was the club as a whole couldn't have been more accommodating. So I guess, as the chairman and the board and whatever, when I arrived and when I looked round initially, they will sort you out with a sponsor that will help you out with a car. I'm the chairman was on the board for the recruitment company I ended up working at for 14 months. They sorted me out with a local real estate agency which found 4, 5, 6 houses, one of which I ended up living with. They bought me a washing machine. They helped out massively. So off the field, credit where credit's due, they were wonderful, great people. My dad's still in contact with some of the people that live and work there. Arguably, it's to try and get Wales tickets, because that's how it works. But like, really, really good people. It just wasn't for me. On the pitch, I played pretty much week in, week out, and the coach kind of put his arm around me, but I don't know. It's very forwards orientated there, and I guess, as I've mentioned previously, I'd come from Leicester Academy, which was similar in a sense to a lot of forward work, but when the backs got it, we ripped up, and it wasn't like that in Wales. Like, when the backs got it, they were all the same. There are very few plumbers in the world that have got feet like Cheslin Colby, or a seed like Finn Russell, and I got very few chances as a winger in the Welsh Prem. And if you ever watch a Welsh Premiership game, that some of them are shown on S4C sometimes, or BBC Wales, you'll understand why that's the case. The ball just does not get there, and that's just kind of how it was. And I guess I arrived in, say, the 1st of August, and by the 1st of September, I knew I wouldn't be staying longer than a year. I saw the season out and I saw the year out, because I'd committed so much and the club had been so helpful with getting me over there that I didn't want to throw it back in their face.
Yeah.
Like, I gave my all for them, like every single training session, every single game. Couldn't have been a better part-time player, I guess. But it just wasn't for me at all.
No, I mean, that's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. So obviously, reflecting on that tough time, and obviously you mentioned there you've come through that time. Looking at now, obviously, where you are now, what's sort of been the highlights for you in your career?
I get going on games. In my playing in the academy for Leicester, there was a game at Welford Road, I think 2 or 3 days before Christmas, and it was basically a top of the table clash versus us and Northampton Saints, and the club had done a lot of promotion for it, and we got a couple thousand fans down to watch the game, which as a 17, 18-year-old lad was absolutely amazing. And we won the game at home just before Christmas, and it was like the best Christmas break I can ever remember having. I say break, the best 4 days off I can ever remember having. And I guess more other highlights. The varsities at Trent were something I'll never ever forget. Just I've still never played in an atmosphere like that.
Good fun in the stand, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, that was it. In my third year, I'd broken my jaw and I was in the stand as well, giving it large. Not that I wasn't. I was on the pitch running water. So that's as much as I remember about that day. And then I guess following that, I've had a few really good days in a Nottingham shirt.
Yeah.
But playing and making my Prem debut and then my home debut for Leicester, I guess top it all. It's kind of what I've been working towards. I don't know, maybe since I was 7, 8 years old, maybe not knowing that was the end goal. But I've been doing this now for 17 years. Is it 17 years? 17 years I've been playing rugby in some level. So making that call I got over lockdown to invite me into the setup at Tigers, and then working my arse off over pre-season there, and then getting a run out at Exeter, making my debut, and then making my home debut and scoring was
Go
unreal.
on, talk about it. How was it when you put that ball down on the line? Yeah. And also, was it? I am correct thinking it was the only match-winning try as well.
Was the only, yeah.
Go on. How was it? I know you want to reminisce a bit.
Yeah. So obviously, first game at home, like, nerves are going, and like I know I've already played a Prem game and whatever, but it's not the same. Still gutted that like my family and friends couldn't be there, but it's kind of part and parcel of what it is, and hopefully one day they'll be able to see me play a Prem game at Welford Road. But yeah, so surreal. So like you're in the changing rooms, Tom Youngs, George Ford got you round and are pumping you up, and Ellis Genge is giving it large, and then the song, don't even know what the song's called, but the duh, like right, this is it. And you walk out, you touch the top of the Crumbie stand, and you go, like, you're just waiting for 25,000 screaming fans, and you get 7 blokes on the bench clapping you out. It's just not, it's not how I envisaged it, but it was amazing nonetheless. And then the try, to be honest with you, I don't really remember. I remember it through watching it on TV afterwards. It was just one of those like flash moments in your life that you go, shit, that actually just happened. And I guess that was just, I don't really know. Just as I said, like I've been working towards it so long, and it was just so buzzing that it happened that I don't actually remember it happening.
No, I can imagine.
It was absolutely brilliant. And then, touch wood, the first of many.
I'm sure, mate. So you talked about that feeling of this is where my journey's been wanting to go for so long, and etc. Also, we've talked around your journey, pretty much every step of it. Now, if you could, and maybe this will round us off quite nicely, if you could, I'll ask you 2 things. If you could go back to one environment for a week or 2, where would you go? And also, thinking purely on your development hat on, how am I getting to be a better rugby player? Where would you go in that regard and why as well? So kind of two things. One of where would you just love to go back to and spend 2 or 3 weeks in that environment? And then also, if you were going to go develop yourself at that time, where would you go for that? And I suppose that doesn't mean where would you go now to develop, because, you know, I'd imagine Tigers will probably develop you a bit better than Leicester Lions would now. But
Yeah.
where did that development? Where was there a period where you felt there's something about this coach or this coaching team, and I can feel myself getting better, and I kind of know why, but I kind of don't.
Yeah. So I guess to answer the first one, if I could go anywhere, I'm answering it in 2 parts. I don't believe a better place to be for me right now than at Leicester. I believe that, and everyone, the club believe that Steve Borthwick, Jordan Murphy, and the team at Leicester have got this vision, this journey that's going to happen with the club. And maybe I'm romanticising it a little bit because it's the club I support, it's the club I grew up with. But
does it finish with you scoring the winner in the final by any chance?
Maybe. But you can write a novel on that if you want.
Cheers.
So that's, I guess, part one. Part two would be going back to probably my second year at university, just because of the enjoyment factor. I don't remember a time where I enjoyed my rugby as much as I did playing for university with my best mates in my second year. I know we were losing most games week in, week out because we just got promoted to the Rugby Super League, but just the enjoyment factor. And I guess I've mentioned fun already. It counts so much into the atmosphere and how not just you as a player, but how the club and how the environment dictates everything. And that is something that you can't mimic. You can't force it. It just happens organically. And that was a brilliant time in my life. But it's gone, and I'm mature enough now to not need it. But it's nice looking back on.
I think something that highlighted there is that where you'd go back to a place where you were losing almost every week says so much about where you were and how the group were. And I suppose that kind of aligns with that, the vision. You were having so much fun, you were enjoying it, and also I'd imagine you could see positive at the end of the light, even though maybe every week you were getting done over.
Yeah, I guess it's hard, especially with the connection at Nottingham at the time. There were a lot of injuries with Notts that meant the better players from the Trent team got moved up. So the team was fluctuating week in, week out. And you can't do that when you go away to Hartbury and Exeter and Durham that have consistently good teams. But as I said, it was just so much fun. And I guess that to carry on to your second point, it was that time then in my second year where I played a lot of university rugby, got into the Bucks team of the year, went to England students, and on the flip side, once that had finished, I then played a lot of time for Nottingham consistently, where I was scoring consistently as well, and my confidence was high, I was playing well, and I think they come hand in hand, especially as a winger, especially as a try scorer. If you're scoring, often you're looking for the ball because you believe you can do it again, and that is the part, I guess, of my career to say that's where I improved the most over a short amount of time, and I couldn't give you a reason as to why. Similarly, awesome. Might have been right place, right time as a winger to put the ball down, but I'd also do some. Wilson and Alex Goebel, the back line at Trent at the time, would do some outrageous things and get away with it and score some wonder tries. So I guess some of it was luck, some of it was a bit of skill, but that was where I guess I developed the most from Trent and Nottingham at the same time, and that's, I guess, enabled me to play so many times for Nottingham in the Champ with a decent try scoring record, and that was a stepping stone to me being at Tigers now.
That's awesome. And I'd assume that environment as well. Obviously, I've met, being at Trent myself, a few of the coaches and a few of the coaches that were around that season and stuff. They knew that you were all such a good, tight group of mates, and that must have helped. I'm assuming obviously, like you say, some of the wonder tries and stuff you were given that freedom to go and explore because you knew that the trust you were playing with your best mates, which always helps.
Yeah. They knew that we knew each other so well that we'd make stuff happen together. It wasn't an individual team at all. It was very much you do this, I'll do you. I wouldn't even need to say stuff to Sutton sometimes. Like, he would know that I'd be on his shoulder at the line, and he would get absolutely smoked by an 8 might be tight head, but he'd put me through a hole because it would help the team. And same with like people like Alex Goebel, Jamie Jack, Michael Dilly. I'm naming names that you might not know necessarily, but the group at Trent then was the tightest group I've ever known.
I must just add, just before we kind of round up, that on that, I remember my first week at Trent as a fresher, obviously slightly younger than you are, mate. And I'd been freshers week, and I came along on a Wednesday. I just took myself down to the Lady Bay and watched I'm trying to think, this might have been the season after the one you're describing, the season opener against Loughborough, when Goebel crashed over in like the last second.
Yeah, I was running water that day. Oh,
yeah,
man.
I was going to say, I didn't think you were on a bit, and I could remember that I knew that if, say, where I'm coaching in the program of this one club ethos and stuff, I knew that if the environment could look as even half as fun as what you guys were doing, the university was going to be in a really good place. And that was something that really stood out. And funnily enough, I joked when I met O'Dowd, the head coach, afterwards, that funnily enough, I didn't even realise that I sat in the row in front of the Loughborough DOR the entire game. So you probably should have stuck a mic on me and carried on. But I remember just watching and seeing how evident it was that obviously you have the pre-season, so the first game's always a big build-up after that 6-7 week block together. But it was evident how much had been done correctly and how much trust you boys had been given.
Yeah.
Just as a kind of a caveat adding to what you'd said.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Perfect, lads. Well, Dave, thank you very much for joining us. Really privileged for you to come on and share your story and your experiences. Okay, guys, so this episode will be going out later on this week, and you can access it through our YouTube links. If you'd like to get involved in an episode, please contact either myself or James P through our LinkedIn messengers, or follow us on Twitter. And again, guys, any feedback is welcome. Again, we're a community, and I think this episode with Dave has really just shown that we're really an open book, and we really want your experiences, your knowledge coming in and having some great discussions with some really interesting people. So thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you for the next one.
Cheers, Dave. Enjoy those Broncos, mate. They're coming.
Cheers.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye-bye.